Everyone, this is Redeemed, aka CBC. So let's analyze the theme of Jonah. Jonah got a message from God. He chose to run away. Why? Jonah was ready to jump ship. Why? Jonah even prayed to God when he was in the belly of the fish. Let us explore this theme further. Stay tuned. Welcome back. There's so many themes surrounding the story of Jonah, which all are basically tied to one thing: the reason why Jonah ran away. It is because of this reason that Jonah was able to jump ship. This very reason, while Jonah was able to sleep in that boat, the same reason why Jonah was able to pray. Let us explore these themes and see how it all connects to the overall reason which helped Jonah during his time of distress, during his time of rebellion, to turn to God. Because if you understand this reasoning and it settles inside of you, you too will be able to run to God, to jump ship and say, okay, God, I'm willing to choose your path. I saw mine is only leading to drowning waters. So let's start. So Jonah was given this message by God at the beginning of the book. But Jonah chose Tarshish, meaning he chose the opposite direction, which is something we sometimes do and say, okay, God, I'm not agreeing with the direction, the way you're leading me. Let's try it my way. So Jonah does. Pays the money, goes into this trip. Then things start to become unsettled. There's a storm. The water also becomes unsettled because God is clearly saying, this is not where I'm leading you. I need you elsewhere. This is not the direction you're supposed to be going. Because at the end of the day, there is a purpose for the path where God leads us. And the reality is this: the purpose sometimes has nothing to do with us, but all those other people connected to our obedience. That's the reality of life, because we are a body. Therefore, each and every single thing connected to us is actually connected to the rest of the people that God has connected to our lives, whether we realize it or not. Maybe we will ever realize it. Maybe God might take us before we actually see the whole bigger picture, but understand this. Just like Jonah and Job, there was always a bigger picture that we can't see, that only God does. So continuing with this, so we have these people who are in the boat with Jonah. They are throwing out all their things. They're saying, okay, we are about to die. But Jonah is sleeping peacefully because he understands there's a God. His God is the one who's in control of the storm, control of everything, because he created it all. Therefore, he's the one that has the authority over it all. Everyone else is panicking. Why? Because they don't know which God is actually in control. They don't know if they're serving the God that is able to save, that is able to stop a storm. That is why they wake up Jonah and say, maybe your God might be the one that is able to stop the storm. So consider this. Sometimes you are in the situation where God has placed you to show and reveal himself. That maybe, okay, fine, you disobeyed me, but let me use this as a teaching moment to prove that there is no other God that is greater than I, just me. So God used that moment when Jonah was disobedient to reveal that all these other gods that you're busy serving, they don't have what it takes to save you. They don't have what it takes to calm the storms that you will face in this life. Only me. Because all those people, after having survived that storm, have seen that they prayed to their gods and they didn't answer. Yet this one man's God, once thrown into the water, calmed the storm that they were afraid would kill them. Consider this, their lives will be forever changed because they know that there is one true God that we can cry out to, that we can call out to. So ask yourself and consider this. How is your life introducing and reflecting God's power, God's grace? Because nowhere in the passage does it say, Jonah started to panic and say, no, just throw me out. He wasn't guessing, he said, throw me over. Because he knew God was there. He says, my God is in control of this. If you want the storm to calm down, throw me over. That's the type of faith and the extent of relationship that Jonah had. The other lesson to take from this section of chapter 1 is the fact that sometimes what we believe is the perfect solution isn't God's solution. Because you find these men trying to save Jonah, thinking, okay, fine, if we keep him aboard and instead throw out everything that we have, Jonah's God will be pleased. But reality was that God wanted Jonah. He didn't want the things. He wanted to reveal himself, and he wanted Jonah. The same goes in our lives. Sometimes we come across people in our lives and we believe, okay, fine, if I play the part of God, protection and savior in their lives, that will please God. But reality is this: God doesn't want you to play a role that you are not supposed to. The only thing that pleases God is submitting to his will. Because by them keeping Jonah on that boat, they were preventing Jonah from going to where he was supposed to. They were preventing God from showing his might, his strength, his ability, his wonder, by being able to calm down the storm. By doing even something more miraculous, bringing a fish, which would not just kill Jonah and swallow him up and say, okay, you are disobedient. But they were taking the opportunity for God to show grace and mercy to Jonah. This is what is displayed within the story. And sometimes these lessons are overlooked because all we say is that, okay, if we do this, if I don't save this person, then no one else can. But reality is you are not supposed to. God is the one that is supposed to come into that situation with his own solution to that situation. And remember, his ways are not our ways. Our way was to keep Jonah in the boat with the rest of us, but God's way was to throw Jonah over so that he could step in and show what he was capable of. We have these men who have never known about God, walking away from this situation forever changed, having lived through powerful testimony that stone gods that we've served all our lives are not able to save. But there is a God that is known by others, who is creator, who is able to completely save, show grace, and be in control of whatever it is that we may face in this life. Let this be the testimony that you also take in this life. As you pass through the lives of others, let them see God's wonder in your life. Be able to stand boldly and trust in the God that you have served, so that others may say, okay, there is a true God, and I want to serve him. So I can also enter boldly into situations and say, this situation is not the end of me, but there is a next beyond this point. There is a next. Even in my disobedience, yes, I know I ran away from him, but I know that there's something. I don't know if it's going to be a fish. Maybe he's going to send another boat, or maybe his hand is going to come down and save me. But I know the mercy and the graces of my God are going to save me, even in this. We've looked at the theme of how Jonah's situation was actually an introduction of who God was. God is creator, God is a mighty God to those that didn't even know or acknowledge that he existed. The next section was Jonah's prayer. So we have Jonah now, swallowed up inside the belly of the fish, and he's busy communing with God. A lot of times when you have been swallowed up by situations, you say, okay, God doesn't exist. If God really exists, would I be in the belly of this fish? It's all swishing inside. I can only imagine how it must have been like for Jonah to be inside the belly of a fish. But nonetheless, he still knows his God. He still knows, okay, the God who created this fish created a situation for me not to die, but instead created a situation where I will be preserved. Therefore, if God is busy preserving my life in this uncomfortable, dark place of isolation, then he can hear me. Understand that the isolation period that you might be in isn't a place where God can't even hear you or see you. You might not be able to see the world, but God, your creator, is able to look at you, acknowledge you, hear you even from the depths, because Jonah even understood that his prayers were being lifted up to God. He didn't say, okay, there's this thing that is concealing me, therefore my prayers are concealed inside it. God can't even hear my prayers. That's the ignorance that we have sometimes because we don't have that deep understanding of God to understand that even in the worst situations, he's still there. There is no limit to God. Our ceiling is not a limit. Our problems are not a limitation for God to be able to work, for God to be able to hear and to act. Because once Jonah was able to express this, acknowledge this, pray this, the fish spat him out. God provided that way. So understand that sometimes even the situations that you might be stuck in your life, there aren't a crippling point where God is saying, this is your doom, this is where your story ends. But this is a situation for you to reflect upon your life, to reflect upon your decisions, to reflect upon who I am. Because during that period, Jonah was focusing on who God is. He was no longer focusing on the fact that, okay, fine, this is not what I wanted to do. His focus was no longer on himself. His focus was on God. That is what isolation is supposed to produce. Give you a moment where your focus will remain on who God is, both in your life and as a whole. Finally, Jonah obeys and he goes to proclaim God's declaration and God's word to a people that did not know him. Remember, the Ninevites did not know about this God the same way the same people who were in the boat with Jonah didn't know God at all. And now they are hearing this declaration and they're hearing about this God. But the funny part is, as much as they don't know about this God, they're saying, okay, if such a powerful, awesome God exists, and he went through the trouble of sending someone to proclaim a message to us, surely he might show mercy. Maybe there's a quality in this God that is of mercy and of grace that we do not see from the other gods that we know. Hence, they go into a fast. They start praying, they start pleading, and they say, God, you've declared a time, a set time. This is your declaration, this is your word. But the fact that you were moved enough to send someone, maybe you'll be moved enough by our tears to change your declaration. Sometimes those that know God or hear about God take so many qualities of God for granted. And those qualities are only seen and understood by those who are outside. And that is the sad part about being in church. Sometimes you get so used to and comfortable with the things of God that you can't even understand that there's so many dimensions and so many things that you can learn about God the same way they did. They heard this fresh news and we say we receive him. We will worship him. We will pray to him. And then God was moved. Because if you understand the whole concept from creation and being made in the image of God, you'd understand that just like a parent, no matter how disobedient your child may be, nyembezi zakhe will mean something to you. They please, they cries, they will mean something to you. I don't know who believes that maybe God can't hear their cries. Maybe their cries and their tears and their pleads are meaningless. But understand this. If God could hear the cries and the pleading of a nation that didn't even acknowledge him, even know about him, then he hears yours because you are his. Even if you don't know him, even if you do not accept him or acknowledge him. But at the end of the day, you are his. And he will hear you. This is the thing that Jonah understood. And this is the reason why Jonah chose to run away. Because he knew that God is one of love. He's one of mercy. This is why Jonah says in chapter 4, this is why I was quick to flee to Tarshish. I knew that you were a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love. A God who relents from sending calamity. Jonah knew if I went all the way to Tarshish, I went all the way to Nineveh, God would change his mind. God will not punish these people. God is sending me because he actually does not even intend on making those people suffer. God intends on claiming those people as his own. Understand this. When God sends a message to you, he's intending for you to return to him. He's saying you are mine. That he is his form and way of ownership. God doesn't want anyone destroyed. He wants everyone to be reconnected to him because your purpose is found in reconnected to him. So remember this and understand this and learn from the people of Nineveh. Learn from the story of Jonah. And understand no matter if you are the person like Jonah who is in rebellion or those that have never even known him, God extends the same amount of grace, the same amount of mercy and love to us all. He didn't love Jonah more than he loved those people. God showed the same amount of grace and mercy to Jonah as he did to the very same people he was busy preaching to. And this is what Jonah understood, that God's love has no limits. God's mercy has no limits. He won't say, no, you chose the opposite direction, therefore you are on your own. He won't say, no, you do not know me, you've never cared about me, and you're only crying out to me because you have heard this judgment. He doesn't. Whether you're crying him out of fear of dying, whether you're crying to him out of fear of destruction, of uqakwa, and pure, utter embarrassment for your rebellion, he will still hear you. He will still love you. He will still pick you up and receive you as his. I pray this message blesses you. If you have any more questions, feel free to post them. And remember to stay blessed and know that you are loved.